just going to give it one more second. All right, I think we are ready to rock. Well, thank you for spending part of your morning with me. My name is Jennifer Henderson. I'm the founder and CEO of Tilt. I thought I'd start today by telling a quick story. Let me tell you about a woman who was a very successful career woman, and she did everything she could to progress her career. Top of the 9 box, promoted every 2 years, always got the stretch assignments, really was that go-to person until one day she became pregnant, and overnight, all of a sudden, she wasn't that person anymore. She stopped getting those stretch assignments. Fast forward 5 years later, another company, another stage of her career, this time when she announced she was expecting with her second, she actually had a promotion rescinded. Well, the story's true, and it's true because it was my story. And unfortunately, it's not that unique. Stories like that happen all the time. I come to you with almost 20 years of real-world operational experience working with Fortune 500 companies. And as I said in my story, I loved it. I was a self-described career woman until those two things happened to me and changed the course of my life. So I set off on my own and founded Tilt, where I am now the acting CEO, where we are dedicated every day to making leave not suck and not having people experience what I experienced. It means that I'm a staunch advocate for employee rights in the workplace. And today I'm going to show you how solving the biggest leave of absence problems can lead to relieved people teams, compliance confidence, educated managers, and supported employees who not only actually return from their leave, which is definitely not guaranteed, but also do so energized and engaged. Let's start out by talking about the top 3 leave of absence problems. 1, under-resourced people teams. Leaves are crazy complex and they're ever changing. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. 2nd, managers are uninformed and pose the biggest legal risks to organizations because leaves don't happen every day. And things likely changed between when a manager last supported a leave, if they even ever have. Also, bias is very, very real, both implicit and explicit. Again, we'll talk more about that. And 3rd, employees feel like an afterthought, and they may very well not return. And just a fun fact here, one that made me really sit up when I was first doing this research, is that it's been proven that employees are 10 times more critical, either for the positive or the negative, of their employers when they're going through or navigating a life event and a leave. So let's dig in a little bit more here. Under-resourced people teams. A running human resource theme across most industries is trying to do more with less, as I'm sure you all know. That could be due to a variety of things: reduced budgets, the tight labor market, and struggling to keep up with an organization's fast growth, just to name a few. Pair this with the steady rise in leave requests coming from a spread out and stressed out workforce, and you have a recipe for disaster for most companies. And add to that we're seeing most leave occurrence skyrocket. We saw a 7% run rate of employee populations engaging in a leave pre-pandemic to nearly double that and still climbing today in most organizations. Tracking leaves in a spreadsheet, trying to determine how much employee A gets paid from the state, lying awake at night praying that employee C doesn't file a lawsuit because their manager said or did something highly illegal while on leave is just not sustainable. Leave laws aren't static either. Ever stayed up late at night Googling leave laws in a state that you've never supported a leave in before? We have. It's really hard. Now that the remote workforce is a commonplace, so is the added pressure to know the latest rules and regulations surrounding a leave. That's why when we talk to HR managers, they tell us that managing a leave is maybe 10% of their job, but 90% of their worry. It's often their least favorite task to oversee, and yet their companies aren't doing what's necessary to support them, to ease their burden and help deliver a positive leave experience for their employees. People teams are maxed out, and they need a comprehensive solution to prevent burnout, save their companies from lawsuits, and ensure that when their employees leave, it was supported and positive, and an experience that made them actually want to return. All right, Let's talk about uninformed managers. Studies show that when life events happen and an employee needs to take a leave, their first point of contact often isn't the HR department, it's likely their manager. And while most managers are highly skilled in their areas of expertise, LOA experts, they are not. As a manager, having an employee go on a leave is an eventuality, and yet most managers are clueless about what they can and can't legally say and do when it comes to handling their employees' upcoming leave. In fact, as you heard, the main force behind me starting Tilt was because I experienced bias and discrimination at 2 different companies for being pregnant. My experience is sadly more common than people realize, and companies with uninformed managers are paying the price, quite literally. Managers are the leading cause of unemployment violations in the United States, and I want to underscore that it's not always because they are intentionally or insensitively crossing the legal line. Many times they just don't know any better because they've been put in a situation out of their depth and asked to understand highly complex laws which lie far outside their scope of normal responsibilities. All right, let's talk about the employees. So employees are no longer settling for a work environment that doesn't treat them like humans. We all know that, right? Things have changed for the better, in our opinion. Well, humans have babies, humans grieve, humans become disabled, and humans have breakdowns. Humans want the freedom and flexibility to easily transition from work to life when life gets hard or delivers a life-altering surprise. Now, we're going to get a little uncomfortable here, but imagine you or someone you know have worked for the same organization for over a decade, and your world just crumbled after a devastating death in your family. Your boss says something sincere at first, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," and followed that up with, "You know, we've got that deadline coming at the end of the month. You aren't going to be out too long, are you?" Your swamped HR department gives you a link to a 1-800 number with a lifeless robo operator that runs you through a list of prompts that you barely have the capacity to comprehend. You don't know what you're supposed to do next, and to no fault of the under-resourced people teams, you don't feel the organization is equipped to support you in a meaningful way. So in your most critical life event, you realize that for all the late hours and stressful demands you've delivered on for working in this organization for over a decade, when you needed support in return, there was none to be found. This is not a theoretical situation. All right, so let's talk about solutions. Let's get above the line here. So solving your leave of absence problems. How do we make leave not suck? Well, getting the support you need to the people who need the support. It might seem like I'm beating a dead horse here, but quite frankly, people teams just need a little more help when it comes to managing leaves. If you're an HR manager watching this, you likely think, yeah, no kidding, Jen. The truth is, most companies can't afford to get leave wrong, yet neglect this most human of the human resources functions over and over. So what can you do to make your case that there is a better way to leave? Well, let me tell you. We've encountered countless HR professionals who just don't have the bandwidth to research the latest state and federal leave programs. So the company will foot the entire bill of a leave of absence, even when they don't have to. That adds up very quick. We've encountered just as many who feel that with all the tracking and bookkeeping, that their role in HR has become more administrative and it has become an advocate to their people, which is really what they signed up for. It often rears its head when an employee says something like, quote, "I don't want to work for a company that doesn't actually support my work-life balance," or "I don't want to be in HR at this organization if I'm not going to be able to help people. And if helping manage leaves is so administratively burdensome and so risky, and I don't feel like I have any support." SHRM just reported that it can cost between 6 to 9 months or 2 to 3 times an employee's salary to replace them. Outsourcing leave management not only keeps you compliant, more on that in just a little bit, but also it more than pays for itself just by making it easy to take advantage of the paid leave programs that are out there that can save your organization very real dollars. Better support for leave management relieves teams' headaches, improves employee satisfaction and retention, and saves real dollars. All right, let's talk about the managers. I mentioned earlier that managers are the #1 cause of employment law violations. Regardless of their intention, this can open up your organization to very serious and very costly lawsuits. Maybe most importantly, it opens up your people to be treated like I was. In fact, if you or someone you know has ever been on the wrong end of an LOA discrimination, let us know in the chat. If I could umbrella the solution to the manager problem into one word, it would be just education. Providing resources to managers that can explain the type of leave their employee is going on, as well as guides them on what they can and can't say or ask their people while they're going on a leave, can go a long way to prevent litigation while ensuring their employee gets the leave support they deserve. Do they know what intermittent leave is? Do they understand why it's wrong to ask an employee to come back early? Being proactive with materials that lay all of this out in plain English is the key ingredient for compliance. It will cost your organization $80,000 on average just to defend one FMLA lawsuit. Managers not only need to know when employees will be out, but planning ahead of time for that leave is a critical step that seems to be reinvented every time there's a new leave. It's curious to us just how many companies seem to be surprised by a leave. We can tell you with certainty, leaves will keep happening at your organization, and you can be prepared and proactive, we promise. The most critical phase of a leave is unequivocally the return, and the manager's role in that phase is mission critical. A leave of absence can almost feel like a time warp for employees when they come back into the fold, especially for longer leaves. It's likely that a lot has happened since they left, and they've been left out of the loop. So offer your managers tips on how to intentionally bring their employees back into projects so they don't feel marginalized, forgotten about, or replaced. In a lot of ways, it's like their first day of work all over again. Making sure that they are still in charge of projects that they were running before, whenever possible, can go a long way in making an employee feel valued and supported on their return. Scheduling meetings with key stakeholders over the first few weeks will integrate them into the flow of things and get them re-energized to contribute as they were before the leave of absence. Again, this can be a lot for even a robust people team to manage, but getting this wrong has the potential to sink an organization. So let's talk about a home for happy employees. There are 3 main phases we should focus on when taking the employee into consideration. 1, pre-leave. 2, the leave itself. And 3, reboarding. Delighting your employee each step of their leave journey can make all the difference between a happy employee returning to the workplace with energy and commitment, and an employee who felt unsupported with a foot already out the door. It all comes down to making the process as easy as possible for your people. So let's break this down. Pre-leave. Sometimes when an employee takes a leave, you have a long runway to prepare and help them get their ducks in a row, say for a maternity leave. Other times, like for a bereavement or a disability leave, time is of the essence to help them navigate forms and deadlines and organize paperwork in an already incredibly stressful environment. Make life easy on your employee taking leave by laying out exactly what they'll need to know about their upcoming leave. How much salary does the company cover for their leave? Are there forms they need to fill out? What are the deadlines? Is there anything they need to do with their manager or their team to prepare for transition away from work, just to name a few questions? Knowing what questions will come up and proactively having everything organized for them can be a real lifesaver for an employee and a turnover saver for you. All right, the leave itself. It's a situation that must be handled very carefully. Knowing what rights your employees have and equipping their managers with that knowledge can keep them from being illegally contacted while on leave and allows your organization to have legal risks substantially mitigated. Questions might arise, and it's imperative that you have a system in place to respond in a timely and empathetic manner so that they feel supported and heard. The most critical phase of all, reboarding. If you've nailed the pre-leave and leave parts of this journey, awesome, good for you. But now comes the most critical part, as I mentioned, the return to work phase. Communication and compassion can go an extremely long way. Their leave might be over, but the critical life event that may have changed their life forever may still be very, very fresh. Show understanding and instill confidence in them that their standing hasn't changed since they left. Some employees might be chomping at the bit to get back to work, while others might need a stair-step return. Effective, inclusive communication is vital in this last stage. Botching the reboarding stage can evaporate all the work that you and your team put in place up to this point, and it's often overlooked by organizations. Reboarding back to work can almost be as much of a shock to the system as going on leave in the first place. Treating your people like humans here can alleviate the problem of employees who return dissatisfied and begin to look elsewhere for employment, if they haven't even already started to do so. All right, to wrap up, I just want to share a quick shameless plug for how Tilt has answered the call to solve these top LOA problems. Tilt was founded from experiencing firsthand the way that companies mismanage leave at work, and far too often, it was an unmitigated dumpster fire. We know you can relate. As we began working with employers, we found that miscommunication, reactive behavior, bias, assumptions, these were all the root of 99% of the issues leading to poor leave experiences for everyone involved. The good news is all of those can be prevented. We knew for a solution to stick that had to start with cost-saving innovative tech that took the administrative burden off maxed out people teams while keeping payroll, employees, and managers engaged in the process. You're up against remote workforces, rapidly changing leave laws, exposure to compliance risk, and a dramatic increase in all varieties of leave requests on top of everything else you have going on in the world of people operations. We heard your stressed out pleas for relief, and we built a better way. That way is also a human way. At our core, we are real people helping navigate significant life-changing journeys for others. When a leave goes sideways or has a complexity that a pull-down menu can't cover, we prioritize being the only solution with the in-house leave law chops to handle the most unique leave situations. You know you're covered with compassionate expert. We call them our empathy warriors, keeping your employees supported and your company compliant. No one should be left in the dark during life's biggest moments. And with Tilt, no one has to be. We know that it's time to give leave some love. Now, with all that being said, I want you to understand that this is not about me. In fact, it's really not even about Tilt. It's about changing decades of antiquated and archaic practices, beliefs, and bias. I have said many times that I've given myself a deadline. My daughter is 5, and I will be damned if she experiences the same crap leave journey that I experienced and likely many of you experienced. That gives me 10 years until she enters the workforce to fix this problem. And I'll need visionary disruptors like you to help join the fight. And that's what this is really all about. This is about you. Investing in these solutions will change the leave of absence experience for you, for your managers, for your employees, and for their families. Thank you all again for joining me here. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to help you give leave some love. Let's see if we've got any questions in the chat. All right. Love it. I love it when we get some questions in. So we've got, what is the best way to make sure that managers stay informed on what they can and cannot say? Awesome question. There are some very specific black and white can and cannot letter of the law scripts that we encourage managers to review, and those are lengthy. So having that information accessible to a manager to arm them in those conversations in the moment is important. The other thing is that, as I said before, it's ever changing. So you can simply Google this. There's a lot of legal resources out there that open source the do's and don'ts of leave. We recommend role playing, especially for the younger managers out there who this may be their first leave experience. And definitely we counsel any manager, because again, this changes so often, to never ever be afraid to say in a conversation, let me get back to you on that, or I'm not sure, let me check. Because answering incorrectly can often have really dramatic impacts and sometimes even lead to legal action. Awesome. Does Tilt help companies find out what leave programs are available in my state? Absolutely. That's what we do. We eat, breathe, and live leave. So we know not only what leave programs have already been passed in the 10 states that have this legislation live, but also what's being drafted in other states and how these all differ from one another. Of course, it can't be simple. If you pass state leave policies, they can't all be the same, right? That's too easy. So each one of these states have their own nuances as to how it's funded, how it's paid out, and all of those differences. And yes, we absolutely do that with all of our leaves and all of our clients. How are other companies navigating the challenges a remote workforce has created in managing LOA? That's a big question. You know, we're seeing companies of all shapes and sizes grapple with this every day. We see everything from pen to paper, spreadsheets, lengthy email chains, which is just not sustainable or scalable, and is really ripe for human error, all the way to our larger clients are really stuck with what we call the legacy providers who have been managing LOA since the passing of the FMLA legislation. And that really is that 1-800 number experience that we spoke about earlier. So when you look at those two different ends of the spectrum, that's really what's available and why we're trying to bring a different way to how leaves are handled for all shapes and sizes of organizations. Above and beyond that of outsourcing this, you're really beholden to Google and some of those legal resources that I mentioned earlier to try to stay up on this ever-changing landscape. And I can't emphasize enough, it truly is ever-changing. Great questions in the chat. Thank you for those. Are there any others out there that I can answer? Awesome. Well, this isn't your only chance. We're gonna go ahead and share our contact information. We're always here to answer questions. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to me directly. I'm at jen@ourtilt.com. And I really appreciate your time and attention to this topic. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much, everyone.